Yo, what's up, y'all? It's Buff Missionary. We out here trying to get 3 degrees buffer. Where y'all at, though? Like, subscribe, share. Don't miss any updates on this journey towards the doctorate, this adventure. Yo, we out here for real. But yo, I got a quick update for y'all. It's the end of the first week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. 3 days of classes. We had lectures last night after being in class for 4 hours. We had a couple lectures back to back this morning, and then like a quick hitter kind of, I don't know what you call it, but we had a guest come in, a young lady who spoke on her experience. I'm gonna share just a couple things from this that I got from the day. So lectures were actually pretty dope. This guy, he's I forget what his position is, but he's one of the main guys out there at the Fuller Theological Seminary out in California. He's here. His name is Amos Young, and he's got some pretty cool insights. And it just goes to show there's so many different ways that you can look at spiritual things. And I kind of want to use this towards the positive and towards the negative for this observation. First, man, when we read through the Bible or scriptural things, I can even take it a step back from that. When we engage in conversation or reading a book, anything basic level communication, right? It's very easy for us to look at it one time and think that we've gotten it. But how many times have you read a book through? How many times have you read the same Bible verse over and over again? How many times have you listened to a song on repeat or watched a movie more than once, and every time that you see it, you engage with something differently? When that happens spiritually, it just shows, man, how can I get to a place where I feel like I know everything? Which is a place we should never get to, but as Christians, a lot of us feel like we're there. After just going through one time through one way of understanding, and we think we got it. That's absolute nonsense. Being in that seminar today reminded me that there are so many different ways that we can see this thing, and regardless of whether your religion is different than mine or we have different cultural backgrounds or experiences, there's still something that I can learn if I choose to listen to someone else. And I think one of the really cool things about the lecture this morning was it was focusing on the other and how we can learn from the other. We shouldn't always go into a place saying everything that I have to give is the only teaching that's going to be happening here. Everything that you gain from me is the only learning that's going to be happening here. No. I can learn from you, you can learn from me. I can teach and you can teach, and we can both learn together. And it's better that way. With that kind of openness either way, it's better that way, because then we get to see and appreciate each other for who we really are. And I think that can be a beautiful thing. Now, the second part was really interesting. Again, like I said, I don't remember what it was called, and it kind of caught me off guard because we're leaving the seminary around noon. It was about lunchtime. We were there from 9 to 12, 3 hours, couple lectures back to back. And right when we're getting ready to leave, I was already up out of my seat, turned around right at the door. And then they said, oh yeah, there's an announcement. At 2 o'clock, there's going to be another meeting. So we want to see you guys back here, the first and second year students, and me being a first year, that's me. Okay, cool. So luckily there was a Zoom link, so I hopped on that. I didn't walk all the way back over there. But anyways, besides the point. Really interesting testimony and story that was shared by this young woman. Grew up in the area here, her family is here, and she had a pretty interesting experience with troubling addictive relationships, things that came as a part of that, whether it was premarital sex, different substances, and all different kinds of stuff that was going on there. And she talked about how it seemed like no one had a pulse on how she was really doing, even though she was in church doing those things, going through those motions kind of a thing, but was really struggling and being torn apart on the inside. So much so that she even had to question whether she wanted to continue living. Ultimately, I'm condensing this down into just a few moments here. We were talking, she was able to share back and forth for, it was an hour and a half, hour, 15 minutes or so. So I'm really condensing this for the sake of time. I'm not trying to be here all day. But the point is that she went through a whole lot, and it seemed like a lot of the people around her weren't really aware. There were some people who were close and who knew, but a lot of her struggles and a lot of the decisions she made, she said, were because we learned all of these different things in church, these ideas, but it never connected to her in real life. This is the very thing that I'm talking about when I say missions and the idea of service. The mission mentality is going over our heads. For the older generation who have experienced that, we speak a different language than the older generation. Younger generation, older, they're speaking different languages, right? So the way that a generation describes something as valuable and defines something as valuable is not the same language that the younger generation is taking to define value. Their language and their descriptions of value is different. So unless the two can start speaking the same or similar languages, they're never going to come together, and each one will never understand what the other one is trying to say or what the other one is going through. It's just going to be, I'm telling you this because it's true. Go ahead and follow that. Makes sense. You know the answers now. You're a great Christian. While on the inside, young people are dying. Young people are being torn apart because they've heard certain things and it doesn't connect with anything that they experience in real life. That's a problem. Now, it's a pretty amazing testimony that she had to share, because she talks about how she went through all of this, and in the last few years she was able to find some really good spiritual outlets to help her overcome some of those struggles and get to a place where she's good now, where she's more confident in her relationship with God now, a place where, you know, she's working over in the eastern part of the state. And the first time that she was there, she was kind of going through the same kind of coping that the rest of her coworkers were going through. But now, after having gone through this experience, she's in a much better place and able to see her own value and worth more and respond accordingly a lot better, which is amazing. But it was funny because when she was talking about her experience with her current ex, boyfriend at the time, someone she had an interest with, there was this, and she was the youngest one in the room, mind you, there was this hesitance for the older people who were there facilitating the conversation and for the older students in the class to call it what it was. For example, when they were talking about the premarital sex part, there was, I think I heard the words relations were used. There was a little bit of uncomfortable laughing. So I think someone said something along the lines of, you know, the things that happen between a man and a woman. All this, I don't even know what you call it, but all this speech around what it actually was. And the girl, she was like, it was sex. Like, you could call it that. We were engaged in sex. We were doing sex. All that right there is exactly what I'm talking about. So you have the older generation who is treating something like it's taboo in the moment that someone is sharing their testimony about that very thing. There's the disconnect. And a lot of people didn't even see it, but it was right there on full display. She had just talked about her experience growing up and how there was a disconnect between what she was being taught and her lived experience, and how the young people wanted something that felt real to them, but it felt shallow being put on them as Christians because they weren't really willing to talk about the real things. She talked, as I've mentioned before, the topic of sex especially is not something that we really talk about in church. It's like everyone's too holy for that. Come on now, where do you think I came from? Shoot, where do you think everybody else came from? So we treat it like this taboo thing that you can't talk about. But the young people are experiencing these things, and because it isn't addressed straight up in church, because we don't have people bold enough to talk about these things in church, it's not relating to the young person's experience. It's just another example of how there's a language that's kind of talked and used on a surface level when it comes to spiritual things, but no one's getting real with it. No one's calling stuff out for what it is. No one's making those direct connections between the spiritual world and the real world, and there shouldn't be a distinction. It should be one and the same. So what do I get from that? To me, man, we got to be better at picking up on these things. Because it happened, and as soon as I saw it, I recognized, oh shoot, that's what she was just talking about. But no one else got it. After she said, yeah, it was sex and we were just having sex, there were still other of the older people in the class who were trying to avoid using the word. And that's the thing. That's the thing. So I know I'm kind of talking in circles now, but the bottom line is this. What are we going to do to realize that when we talk about spiritual things, if we want young people to have something they can connect with, we have to be willing to get real with them. We can't treat all the things that we view so negatively as taboo. These things are out there and they're a part of life. Sex is, alcohol is, drugs are, all that stuff. It's a part of life. Are we going to talk about it and be explicit in the connections that we make between the spiritual things and those real life, real world things? Or are we going to keep trying to dodge it like taboo and then get upset with the kids because they're leaving the church in droves because there's nothing connecting, there's nothing real, there's nothing beyond surface level with them? That's what it is. That's what it is. We can make the connection, but we have to be willing to be bold in our conversation. We have to be willing to talk about real things that these young people are going through. Otherwise, we make ourselves unrelatable because that young person is struggling with premarital sex, and I can't say the word sex in church. So now I've shamed them into thinking that what they're going through is something that should not be talked about in church. That should not be talked about with all these people because they never talk about it, so why should I? We can't afford to do that to our young people. We can't. We got to be more open. We got to be more real. We got to get beyond this surface level thinking we're doing something by making sure everyone knows the 66 books in order, by making sure they know these kings and this prophecy in 2,300 days. We are missing the point. And the young people say, you can miss me with all that because we're not connecting with them on a real basis. We're not connecting the things that are in the scripture that bring life to the real life of the young person. We can do better. We have to do better. If we're going to change the script, we must do better. It's the only way. But we got to be willing to go deeper and to be real and to stop acting like we can't talk about this stuff like it's so taboo because we don't realize that we're alienating the young people that we wish would stay in the church by our own actions and the way that we handle stuff. Got to change the game. It's the Buff Missionary. We out here trying to get 3 degrees buffer, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.